Welcome back, everybody, to the Fantasy Birds. Today, we have an NFL mock draft, full first round. We're going picks 1 through 32, giving our predictions, no trades. If you want to see more NFL content, hit that subscribe button. But let's not waste your time. Let's hop right into our 2024 NFL mock draft.
At pick number one, no surprise here, Chicago Bears. They trade Justin Fields in the offseason to make way for their new quarterback. Going with Caleb Williams, first quarterback off the board at the pick 101.
Number two is where it starts to get a little bit more divisive. Personally, I have Jaden Daniels as my QB2. It's really just the arc for me. If you look back to a similar LSU quarterback, Joe Burrow, this is a guy that played a couple of years and then that last year at LSU, he exploded. It's the same thing with Jaden Daniels, and I like the trajectory that he's on, not to mention he's the most dynamic quarterback in this draft. And I like Jaden Daniels at number two overall.
Okay, so back-to-back quarterbacks. I'm not going to end that trend. Drake May, I think there's a possibility he goes at number two. But Daniels might be a better fit with their new offensive coordinator situation. If May is available at 3, I do think they will take him, even with the rumors around New England that they do like J.J. McCarthy. Could be a smokescreen. I think Drake May, quarterback number 3 in the class, goes number 3 overall.
4, we have the Arizona Cardinals. And if the draft stays the way it is, we're going to go with Marvin Harrison Jr. This is the best non-quarterback in this draft, maybe the best player, regardless of position. It's in position in the entire draft. One of the best wide receiver prospects we've seen in a long time. Really fluid. He's 6'4" and he moves like a guy who's 5'10".
Here at number 5 with the Chargers. This is obviously a position that a team like Minnesota could trade up and get their quarterback. But we're not going to be predicting trades in this mock draft. So if Chargers on the clock, they could go wide receiver and Malik Neighbors with some of the guys they lost this offseason. But Harbaugh, new coach, his system is pound the football with an offensive line. I'm taking the best offensive lineman in this class, Joe Alt out of Notre Dame for the Chargers, even with the glaring need at wide receiver.
If I'm a Giants fan, though, I'm loving the way this board is set up. What they don't have is any sort of elite go-to receiving option. They wanted Darren Waller to be that late in his career, but we don't even know if he's going to come back. He might retire. That's kind of how dire the pass catching situation is for the New York Giants. And yet Malik Neighbors at number 6 just falls right into their lap. Malik Neighbors, wide receiver out of LSU. This is a guy that has jetpacks attached to his feet. He is one of the best receivers after the catch that I've seen in a while, but he's also well-rounded enough to be strong at the catch point. He's not going to be a Randy Moss necessarily, but he will definitely get the job done at the catch point.
A couple wide receivers going off the board. Titans here at number 7. Obviously, Joe Alt has been predicted to the Titans in a number of mock drafts, not here in our mock draft. Still think they go offensive line. There's a couple guys you can go with. Fashanu. I'm going to go with Talise Fuanga out of Oregon State. That's the guy we're going to predict here. So many options at offensive line, but I'm going to give him from Oregon State if they're not able to get Joe Alt, if he's off the board here at number 7.
The Falcons, to me, have 3 clear needs, right? They have defensive lineman, cornerback. You see that on the screen. I also do think they do need a dynamic edge rusher. Dallas Turner is a potential option right there, just in terms of someone who fits their profile. Those, speed rushing outside linebackers that they've had before. But to me, I was really considering Quinyon Mitchell. To me, you just can't pass up Jerzon Newton when he's on the board. I personally think that Jerzon Newton is the best defensive player in this draft. He is a little bit short, but he makes up for it in play strength, hand usage, and he really packs a punch and is both an elite pass rusher as well as a run defender.
Chicago Bears at number 9 with their second pick in the top 10. People want to put another wide receiver here to match him up with Caleb Williams. They do bring it over Keenan Allen in free agency, him and DJ Moore. That's enough reason. Obviously not a long-term play with Keenan Allen, but I think they addressed the defensive line. They made the trade for Montez Sweat last season. I think they attack it yet again in this draft with a guy like Dallas Turner from Alabama, very athletic. We saw second fiddle to Will Anderson. He goes top 5 in the draft last season. Turner kind of makes a name for himself this season on the edge for Alabama. I think it's a great pairing with Montez Sweat for the Chicago Bears.
So for the New York Jets at 10, it's just too hard to pass up Rome Odunze here. Rome Odunze is the best player on the board. He is a superstar future wide receiver, in my opinion. He's very well-rounded, does it all. Might not be as explosive as Malik Neighbors and might not quite have the measurables that Marvin Harrison Jr. does, but this is a guy who's very crafty, can win in any level in the field in any way. He really improved at the catch point this past year. If you're New York, you have Garrett Wilson. You also have Mike Williams coming off of a torn ACL, and he is on the wrong side of 30. So you get a dynamic receiving option for who can help you immediately and be good long term for whoever their next quarterback is. I know they need an offensive tackle desperately. Jets fans, you can try to get that in the second round with Rome there because long term, Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses, if you expect them to play 16 games, they're not going to. So that's another position of need to address later in the draft. But I couldn't pass up Rome.
At number 11 with Minnesota. Now, they probably trade up to get their quarterback, but if they don't, I think this is where they go and get their quarterback. Not my favorite guy in this draft, but at a glaring position of need for the Minnesota Vikings, Kirk Cousins on his way to Atlanta. This is a perfect opportunity for JJ McCarthy, who had the best possible scenario play out in Michigan. Great defense, great run game. Now he goes to the Minnesota Vikings with one of the most talented offensive head coaches in the game, surrounded by Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, and Jordan Addison. Couldn't ask for a better situation for JJ McCarthy. And at 11, I will take him for the Minnesota Vikings.
Moving on to the draft, we have the Denver Broncos, which was the most difficult pick that I had to make because this is a team that desperately needs a quarterback, but they also don't have a quarterback that's worth taking at number 12. Sean Payton is a guy who wants to trade up. So what does Denver make a move into the top 10? Maybe, but with what assets? They don't have any other pick. And they don't really have any other prime picks in the first 3 rounds because they traded them all away for Russell Wilson and Sean Payton, the coach. So what I will say is if you're Denver, I wouldn't reach on a quarterback here. I would try to keep stacking your roster with as much young talent as you can because you don't have a lot of it right now. To me, the best player at a position of need right now is Quinyon Mitchell, cornerback out of Toledo. He blew up the combine. He was great at the Senior Bowl. He's shown out at every step of the way. To me, I think he's the best cornerback in this draft.
Staying in the AFC West at pick 13, Las Vegas on the clock here. I'm also going with another position of need for the Raiders and a strong offensive line class like we've alluded to. I'm going to select J.C. Latham here, strong right tackle out of Alabama. Now, they already have a pretty solid left tackle, so to pair him up with J.C. Latham on the right side, I think that's really what this team looking to do. They lose Josh Jacobs, so they're going to need to lean on this offensive line with whatever quarterback play they decide to try it out there this year. Not going to be great, so big rebuild spot for the Raiders, and I think with such a glaring need at offensive line, I will take J.C. Latham.
Seems like a Raiders type of guy, too. Big school, Alabama, strong pedigree, 5-star recruit coming out of high school. He's got that pedigree that they like. New Orleans at number 14. I will make the pick for the Hootats. This is very easy to me. Offensive tackle, offensive tackle, offensive tackle. Now, this is a football team that has a lot of different needs. They have a lot of different ways that they can ultimately attack in this draft, but not at the first pick. To me, if you have one of those top 4 offensive tackles available at pick, at 14, you have to take a swing at it. Olu Fashanu, to me, is the pick here.
Yeah, these linemen just keep coming off the board. Indianapolis at pick 15. I was tempted to go wide receiver with Brian Thomas still on the board. Tempted to go cornerback for this Indianapolis team, but I'm going to go with Brock Bowers just based on talent alone. I mean, I think at 15, this is too far for him to slide.
That's
one of the
fine.
most talented prospects at the tight end position we've seen. Obviously, Kyle Pitts went 5th overall a couple of years back. Brock Bowers, great receiving tight end. I think the Colts would be very excited to add him alongside Michael Pittman. Give Anthony Richardson, a young quarterback, a safety blanket with a guy we saw at the University of Georgia be so productive. I think the Colts would be very excited about this pick if Brock Bowers were available at pick 15.
With the Seahawks at number 16, what I look at is they have a couple different needs. Latu is there at edge. They could use a really good edge defender, but they also need offensive line. They lost Damian Lewis to free agency, and I'm looking at Troy Fautanu there at number 16. He's a guy that can play multiple positions. He's listed as a tackle. They don't necessarily need a tackle. I like him at guard. I think he's going to plug and play right in there. He's one of the best players on that Washington team that made it to the national championship.
With the Jaguars here, I'm looking them to go defense. They just signed Josh Allen to a massive contract, top 5 at the position. Outside of the quarterback position, edge rusher, probably the most important player on the field. for a team. They locked that up. Now I think they look to address the secondary in an AFC South that is quietly becoming one of the best wide receiver divisions in the National Football League with Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, Nico Collins. In Tennessee, they have DeAndre Hopkins along with Calvin Ridley, who the Jaguars lose. And we just predicted the Indianapolis Colts with Michael Pittman and Brock Bowers. So a lot of receiving options in this division. I looked for them to take Alabama cornerback Terrion Arnold and lock up that secondary with the additions they made and re-signing Josh Allen on the line.
If I'm looking at the Bengals at number 18, I think the Bengals are really fun because there's a lot of different directions that you can go with this. I still think they need offensive line help or depth. Long term, they could use a tackle. I don't think Trent Brown is going to be there for multiple seasons. So they could definitely go offensive line here. But for me, Byron Murphy is staring them right in the face. Losing a guy like DJ Reader in free agency, I think it opens a bit of a hole in the defensive line. They have tried to shore that up the best they can, but Byron Murphy to me is a great value at a position of need for a team that's going to try to make another Super Bowl run.
At number 19, Los Angeles Rams on the clock. They lose Aaron Donald to retirement. I think they do not waste any time filling that defensive line spot. Laiatu Latu out of UCLA, one of the more productive college careers. I think he's a plug-and-play guy. He gives you pressure on the quarterback at obviously a glaring spot when you miss out on a Hall of Fame type player in Aaron Donald, losing him. So I think they don't waste any time in replacing him. Let's take the edge rusher out of UCLA.
At number 20, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. To me, there was only this came down to two positions. You have cornerback and wide receiver. These are two needs for the Steelers. And I'm going to go with Brian Thomas Jr. I think Brian Thomas Jr. to me is wide receiver 4 in this draft. And so if you're getting wide receiver 4 in a stacked receiver draft this year, I think that's really good value. Brian Thomas ran a 4.33 at 6'3", 209 pounds. Only 2 receivers in the history of the NFL Combine, size adjusted, have ever run a time like that, including Darius Hayward-Bay, and he was a top 5 pick for the Oakland Raiders back in the day. So I think this is a big time position of need for them.
Moving on to the Dolphins. We talk about low moving costs. How about Florida State down to Miami Dolphins? Jared Verse, maybe the most pro-ready edge guy in this draft. They lose Christian Wilkins to the Las Vegas Raiders in free agency. They replace him with Jared Verse, and I think it's a seamless transition for him, ready to get after the quarterback for the Dolphins.
Number 22, Philadelphia Eagles. Man, this is just a team every year that just lets good players fall to them. And I think this is another case right here. A DB early if Cooper DeJean is still there at pick number 22. And I think he is a very versatile defensive back for a team that really struggled against the pass last year, especially as the season went on. They have Darius Slay and James Bradbury, but so even if Cooper DeJean is not a starting boundary corner right away, you still can put him at nickel, maybe to replace Avonte Maddox. At the very least, he'll be an upgrade over guys like Kelee Ringo and Eli Ricks. Maybe he can be an upgrade at safety over a guy like Reed Blankenship. Either way, I think this is a really good, versatile pick that the Eagles can make.
Hey, back to the Vikings at 23. Now, they probably don't have this pick like we talked about. They probably move up early in the draft to take their quarterback. But if that doesn't happen, they will have the 23rd pick in the draft. And I think they go cornerback Nate Wiggins. There are some other options they could have taken at cornerback, but I think Wiggins pairs great with this Minnesota defense that led the league in blitz percentage. So you're going to need man coverage on the outside, and Wiggins very good at that. So I think it's a very good pairing for the Minnesota Vikings defense, the Clemson quarterback Nate Wiggins.
Dallas at number 24. Wow, this team needs a lot on offense. They lose Tyron Smith. They drafted Tyler Smith to play offensive tackle as a potential replacement, but he's been playing so well at guard. Do you move Smith out to tackle to replace Tyron Smith? I don't know if I would when he's been playing so well at guard. This is also a team that's very, very old at receiver outside of CeeDee Lamb. They have needs everywhere, but I'm looking at Tyler Biadasz leaving the center, going to Washington. I think Jackson Powers-Johnson is a really good plug-and-play center. Best center in the draft, in my opinion, that can come in and be a day one starter for them. So I'm going to go with Jackson Powers-Johnson at number 24 for the Dallas Cowboys.
Okay, Green Bay Packers. Think they can go offensive line here with David Bakhtiari, looking for a replacement there eventually. But I'm going to go cornerback. I think with This Packers defense has been shredded in the past in the secondary. Jair Alexander, we have some question marks at the DB position. And Green Bay has a history of going after and getting these Alabama cornerbacks. I think they attack that position again with another fascinating name, Kool-Aid McKinstry out of Alabama, 3-year starter, long player. I think he can play some very valuable snaps for this team going forward. And in NFC North, where the offenses look to be ramping up. Obviously, Detroit's already there. Minnesota, the weapons, we've already talked about that. And Chicago bringing in Caleb Williams and potentially a first-round wide receiver to pair with him. I think this is a position that Packers need to attack, and I think they do in the first round with Kool-Aid McKinstry.
All right, Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 26. To me, this comes down to either getting another edge rusher or getting help on that interior offensive line. And to me, it's very simple. You have the top 3 edge guys in Verse, Latu, and Dallas Turner all off the board so far. So I'm going to turn my attention to offensive line, especially interior offensive line. And to me, Graham Barton, again, is another guy who can plug and play at really any position, guard or even center on that offensive line. So I think the fact that Graham Barton is still there, I think that's great value for the Buccaneers.
27 for the Cardinals. A lot of positions they need to fill. They already get the wide receiver in Marvin Harrison. I'm going to attack the defensive side. Penn State edge rusher, Chop Robinson, all the talent in the world. Not day one ready, but this Cardinals team is not ready to compete for a championship. Perfect project player. I think very versatile.
Buffalo Bills, they needed a wide receiver before they traded Stephon Diggs to the Houston Texans. And now that they've let Stephon Diggs walk, I think this is a given. If a guy like Adonai Mitchell is there at 28, I think this is something you have to jump on if you're the Bills. He is a good route runner. He is very well-rounded, a little skinny, but he's aggressive at the catch point, runs a really good full route tree.
With the Detroit Lions, I did think about going wide receiver here, but with the top options gone and Adonai Mitchell going as well, I decided to go edge rusher to pair along with Aiden Hutchinson, who had a phenomenal second season for the Detroit Lions. I think Darius Robinson out of Missouri, great edge pressure guy. They can rotate in on snaps. For defense, Dan Campbell, we know he wants to play physical football, and establishing the defensive line is a big part of it. So I think he fits well with Dan Campbell and that defense for the Lions.
At pick number 30, the Baltimore Ravens. This is a team that every year someone falls to them. That's them with Amarius Mims here on the board. They need some offensive line help. This might not be a guy that starts at offensive tackle for them day one. He might need to slide into guard if he wants to play early, but I think long term, this is a guy that can really be an incredible value and fit the athletic profile and strength profile that they look for in a power running scheme. So give me Amarius Mims, offensive tackle out of Georgia at pick number 30, and end the slide.
I think Mims was a potential steal for the 49ers at this pick. I think a great pairing as well. Looking to replace cornerstone left tackle as well. I don't think they need a guy to play day one, but they need some more depth at the offensive line position. And I think they attacked that with Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma. I think they would have been more excited about the ceiling with Mims, but I think Guyton's still a player they would be excited to play. This 49ers offense that loves to feed into the run game and powered by this strong offensive line. Also do think wide receiver is in play here with Brandon Ayuk requesting a trade, but I'm going to go with Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma for the 49ers.
You're breaking my heart at 32, man, because that would have been my pick. I really think the Chiefs want to address something on the trenches. I don't think they want to go wide receiver in this deep of a draft class at 32. I think they want to address some trench help. And to me, I think Braden Fisk is a guy who, even though it's the defensive line, they brought in a guy like Derek Nottie to go next to Chris Jones, an all-pro player. But man, I still think Braden Fisk right here at the end of the first round. This is a guy that has just been a rock star throughout the whole process. He's almost a perfect 10 on the RAS score that we talked about earlier. So his athletic testing is insane. Coming out of Florida State, transferring from Western Michigan, can go late in the first round and really be a steal.
All right, that's going to wrap up our round one mock draft for the 2024 NFL draft. Thank you guys for watching. Let us know in the comments what you think of these picks. Obviously, no one is going to agree with everything we had to say. But let us know what you think. We'll see you guys next week with another episode of the Fantasy Birds.